current food system, unfortunately, is seen as a business. So food is seen as a commodity, as an object for profit, a merchandise, and this is the fundamental flaw of the food system because it cannot ensure that food is guaranteed or respected as a right. So the whole logic has to change, has to be based on justice, has to be focused on people and not on markets. And for this to happen, social justice as a whole has to be integrated into the food system. It has to be rethought to include social justice, climate justice, intergenerational justice, gender equality, racial equality, and so on. So these are the elements that are really necessary that would ensure participation and that people's voices would be put first and that the planet would be respected. So as the current food system is very much directed or run by corporations, by the private sector, private interests tend to come before common good. So this is already a fundamental flaw and a challenge. Corporations are going to be present. They're part of our economic model, our economic system. So we're in this relationship with them. However, they should not have the upper hand or the power or the last word on where food should go, how it's grown, who it's grown by, where it goes, how it's distributed. So this means higher participation, creating space for people, for communities to have a voice in the food system. This would counter some of the corporate capture. Another element is to actually be a watchdog for human rights abuses that happen from the corporate level. So corporate due diligence laws, human rights protection, these are all guarantees have to be put in place to make sure that the corporate capture is not the dominant narrative. As in many of the current systems that are in place, there's a fundamental injustice, there's gender inequality just about everywhere, and it's particularly true in the food system, particularly because in agricultural areas women have less access to land or less land rights, less recognized rights. So there's already an element there. There's a legal framework that could be improved in a lot of situations to guarantee that they have equality, but their voices have to be heard, their suggestions, their success stories, not just seen as victims or as beneficiaries, but actors, true change makers in this process, and they have stories to tell. So it's about creating that space and honoring that, and from a broader social justice perspective, women will also have their rights better respected. Agroecology is nothing new. It's actually based on traditional knowledge of the land, knowledge of the seasons, of the cycle of life. There's a lot of wisdom, there's a lot of science behind it. It's also a very integral approach because it takes into consideration the rights of the community, the common good, the intergenerational justice element, the rights of women. So these are really important, the rights of Indigenous people, of the communities. So, and there's a better respect for biodiversity in that model. So it really needs to be explored much more. It needs to be given a lot more attention, a lot more focus, financing as well. Let's fund it, let's do some research around it and give it space because it's a real and credible solution and it's working, it's feeding people. So the only blockage we can see is that because there are interests against it. So it's not the common interest that's dominating. If agroecology was put forward, we'd be thinking more in a perspective of social justice and common good.